Game one between the Pacers and Thunder, I thought was OKC letting go of the rope in like late third, early fourth, letting Indy stay in the game. And then from there, it was just like Indiana shot making. It was that Nembhard ISO 3. It was the Miles Turner banked in corner 3. And then it was obviously the game-winning shot by Halliburton from there. Right.
That was a crazy ending. Like the amount of shot making that they hit. Like I put a video like highlight thread on just like how insane that was.
Yeah.
Because as much as you want to like break down how they made a comeback, you got to hit the timely shots.
You got to hit the timely shots.
Which is what David Adelman said, and I texted you. But it's hard to say, like, yeah, every team wants timely shots. It's just like, and it's hard to plan for. You can't guarantee timely shots. And I think OKC hit timely shots pretty much all through the game too. So
I agree with that for sure. It's like whenever Indiana was trying to like make a bit of a run, those are the shots that they weren't hitting in game one. So Indiana was allowed to go on their runs and kind of stay in it, as opposed to those runs being killed by timely shots in game two. Okay, so with game one, I want to talk a bit about the role of Nembhard's drives, because I think it's going to inform how we see OKC sort of change up their defense on him in game two. Well, if you could bring up the and one against Caruso. This was one of the first drives that Nembhard had in the fourth quarter. Gets in pretty deep and hits this and one against Caruso. He's a really good driver. I think that OKC has largely been playing him for the drive. Miles Turner sets a good screen for him there. Who is that? Jalen Williams recovers and then Jalen Williams sort of stunts and then lets Caruso recover, and then Nembhard's able to get downhill anyway and hit this and one. That was really tough, and I was kind of surprised that they called the foul because, they don't call fouls on the Thunder. They do, but they don't. Not shooting fouls. They call non-shooting fouls on the Thunder. So that was one of the first drives. Then you see in the next one with the OB top and three that we'll pull up. OKC is like pinching in on him even more, and they're ignoring Obi. So I think is that Hartenstein's ignoring Obi, and then Nembhard's able to keep his pivot and make the kick out to Obi here. And I don't know if that's a difference with like Thunder like reacting to the way that how good Nembhard was as a driver, or because in this case it's Hartenstein is on the floor and defends differently because he's like way prioritizing the paint as his like assignment, as opposed to Obi Toppin. You can just go do whatever you want on the perimeter.
Man, Obi Toppin's shooting in that first game was very impressive.
He hit that tough like step back. It was technically a catch and shoot shot, but I think he had to like step back or sidestep off the three from the left sort of corner wing area as well. But then the last Nembhard drive I want to draw attention to is this one off a pick and roll. This set of shots, by the way, so he's got Caruso on him, bumps him off with the screen, and then Miles gets a little sort of pick and pop in the lane there because they don't care what Miles is doing. This was kind of, I don't know if this was more Chet's fault or Caruso's, but Caruso was on Nembhard for all three of these. And it felt like there were a lot of buckets on Caruso's head in this fourth quarter, especially in this early, like first half of the fourth quarter, that let Indy actually get back in the game. I think the third quarter was about Indiana hanging around, and the beginning of the fourth quarter was like, we're getting back in the game. And then obviously the insane shot making comes in the last like 6 minutes of this game, right?
Yeah, I mean, Caruso got caught on that screen there, which doesn't happen a ton, but that left it open.
This looks more like regular season Caruso on some of these possessions, because this is like the Alex Caruso that I expected to see in the playoffs based on the film. When I was doing the film work on like, how does this guy generally guard Jamal Murray? It's like, it's actually not that hard to bump him off a screen when you're coming from off ball or like coming in for a DHO, especially because he's quick in isolation, but it's just harder to guard a guy off the ball, right? Like he's not KCP quick, like KCP staying with Steph around off ball screens kind of quick. But he's got like length to recover and that kind of thing. When you're talking about guarding like these off ball actions or in this case, like Nembhard was just fast with the ball in pick and roll, right?
Yeah, and that's still a tough shot from Miles to
Yeah,
hit,
for
and
sure.
Caruso can like recover back and contest from behind, but he's still able to hit that.
Yeah. Smiles is
Which,
7 feet tall. Like,
but I mean, Chet just does what he has to do on that play. But I'll definitely talk about Chet more in game 2 because he had a much better game.
so, speaking of Chet in game 1, Dagnall doesn't play him down the stretch. And I thought SGA was attacked heavily in a variety of ways in the last phase of this game. Again, like some of it was like insane shot making, but there were specific plays where I'm like, oh, SGA, oh, SGA, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? I think he was putting all of his energy on offense and trying to make sure that they just got a shot up every time down in this fourth quarter and sort of trying to take over in that way. And Indiana was just like, nope, we're gonna go. So the first one, speaking of just going, is a Halliburton transition drive on SGA. So this was just a grab and go possession for Hali. I think he got the rebound and just pushes the ball all the way down. This is a pretty tough finish, but he gets the step on SGA and is able to get all the way down to the rim. Chet is actually on Nemhard here, so he actually follows him out to the corner, and Chet just doesn't, recover in time to help at the rim.
Yeah, that was a massive story. I thought watching the game back, and that comeback was just how much they went at Shea specifically.
Yeah.
And I don't know how confident they are in attacking him. Obviously, the game got out of hand, I think, too early in game 2 to really see how that might have developed again if the game was close in game 2, which I really wanted to see. But that was one of the only plays that Halliburton drove and was getting aggressive towards the end of that game because he had been silent for a while there.
I agree. I think that he struggles with Dort. I just think he does, both on and off the ball. Halliburton's struggling to get separation from Lou Dort, but when he gets the switch on Shea, we'll talk about a game 2 possession where it's actually the opposite here. But when he gets the switch on Shea, okay, I'm able to get the step on this guy. I was looking at there was a tweet that someone had that was just like, what are the Thunder's weaknesses, right? And I'm like, well, it's obviously SGA, and he's a good defender, but what are their weak points? It's like that's the weak point relatively, compared to what it could be. So the way that you turn any player into a defensive liability, and I mean any player can be a defensive liability, is you figure out what is this guy good at guarding, and how can we not attack him that way? Let's attack him other ways, right?
And just continue to put him in actions, keep going at him. People have done that to Jamal throughout time, and he had to learn to hold up more consistently, especially in the playoffs on defense. And SGA has the skills to be a capable defender. Obviously everyone knows he's a good defender, quote unquote. But he's gonna be fatigued. He's never made a run to the finals. He's an offensive workhorse. So
he's got insane usage for this team that doesn't really have other high level creation. That's what you do. And it's not just a form of offense. It's also defense if you're trying to tire him out for the offensive end. Right. So I wasn't necessarily surprised to see Indiana go to this. In fact, I would have been surprised if they didn't, because I'm like, who else are you attacking, on this team? If you go to the Neesmith 3 here, actually. So this one wasn't as much SGA's fault. This was often a scramble because I think Nemhard gets an offensive rebound. That was a big part of the story in this segment of the game where Dagnall takes Chet off the floor. We didn't talk about this, but OKC decided to change their starting lineup and they went small with one center as opposed to the double big look. But that was not as big of an issue with me. I was more concerned with going centerless at the end of this game when Indiana had Pascal on the floor. And it wasn't a situation where you were like, oh, Chet can't guard Pascal. It's like, well, Chet's whole thing is all this defensive versatility, and Pascal is maybe an ideal player for Chet to guard, actually.
Yeah. And then you're going to have someone else on Pascal on the Thunder who they have a lot of capable defenders, but they need to be on other guys too. And sometimes Shea ends up on SGA. But this one
or
was
on Halliburton, right? Like, because you're putting
yeah,
like a Dort on Pascal, for example, and it's like Dort was doing such a good job shutting Halliburton down, but now they're trying to guard Pascal. But this was off a broken play,
yeah,
and
I like
Shea's
this
kind of
one.
like, let's prioritize the paint.
Yeah, he's
Neesmith
looking to his
relocates to the
left.
corner. Yeah, you
And
can go
then
ahead.
this was a kind of weird screen where Obi Toppin kind of just like got his butt into both guys, which I like, like gave your shooter a chance. But yeah, no one was able to come and contest that shot. So
Well, what was your reaction watching Obi Toppin's overall game in Game 1?
I was just like, damn, I was so wrong.
Your Obi Toppin thoughts are some of the strongest I know of any one person about a particular bench
Like
player.
random player.
Yeah.
I just like think he sometimes looks awkward and slow and like for his size, I don't necessarily love how he looks. But damn, he could shoot it. I just think he looks awkward when he's running around and sometimes guarding but like he can
the
still do a good
defense is
job.
not like it's not the defense is not.
Yeah, I just think he looks slow. But I mean, if you're gonna shoot threes like that, and he's a vertical spacer too, which a lot of like 3-point shooters don't have that combination as well.
That's true.
But it's just he's got to keep consistently hitting that shot. So
Yeah.
they were closing out harder on
agree.
him on game 2.
He was huge.
Cool.
He was a big X factor for Indiana in Game 1, and they only won the game by 1, so they needed every single thing that Obi was able to give them in that game, including the screen for this Neesmith 3. I've got the clip here of the Nemhard ISO 3. So for this one, I think SG actually plays this correctly because, again, Nemhard's drives have kind of been killing them, but I put this in here for fun.
My favorite play of the game, but also that
Canada
I was like
on
upset
Canada
about.
crime. You were upset about this?
Well, people were in the chat when you were talking to Jeff were definitely already saying that they are bemoaning the chance to have gotten Nemhard. So when you see Nemhard do that to the MVP and you realize he could be on our team, you're like, God damn it. But
yeah.
And I was posting about that for fun. But that was a really good step back 3 and weirdly reminiscent of what Wiggins was doing in game 2 for the Thunder.
Aaron Wiggins.
Yeah, Aaron Wiggins, because he was doing step back 3s, and I was like, that's like Nemhard, but he's a bench player for them. So because he had like this really nice step back 3 in the run at the beginning of the second that when it was getting out of hand.
Yeah, and Nemhard was their big. I mean, when the Thunder have an X Factor game, it's a blowout. When Indiana has an X Factor game, they win by 1.
As is the case with a lot of teams that are going against the Thunder.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing with the Nemhard 3s is that he'd actually been bricking for a large part of this game. I don't know what he went the rest of the way, but in both games 1 and 2, I felt like he didn't really make any of his catch and shoot looks. A lot of his corner 3s ended up being just air balls, which, isn't great because I think it makes the defense feel really, really good when you get a wide open 3 and then you airball it. Because they're like, yep, our coverage is perfect. We're never going to change it, even if you make this one the next time. So that's why those like air ball like goes over the rim misses are the ones that like piss me off the most when like a Denver player does it. I'm just like, ugh, that's painful. Even though every miss is a miss, right? But some misses hurt more than others. The last one I've got here is this is one a lot of people have talked about, actually, the Pascal offensive rebound putback. So can you pause this video for a second? No chat on the floor. Who is on Nemhard, Case, and Wallace? And they put Dort on Halliburton. And here's what happens when you do that is this is off a transition scramble, to be fair, but Nemhard takes the ISO 3, and then Pascal is able to offensive rebound because he's got Shea on him. And Shea's exhausted because he's taken maybe the last 5 shots for the team at this point. And yeah, Pascal just gets the putback, puts the game within 1. And
yeah, that's one of those things where, you want one of the bigs out there.
Yeah. I thought Dagnall really, like, a lot of people talked about the starting lineup change a lot again, and I'm just like, I don't really care about that. I know New York got away with double big a lot in the Pacers series, but I just was like, it's not just like, oh, you have to play to Indy. I just thought the small, like the one center look has been the best look for OKC, like all playoffs. So I was just like, yeah, hit him with your best punch, whatever. But the no center look to close a finals game was like, dude, like what are we doing here? I get that Rick Carlisle took Miles Turner off the floor, and I forget why he did that. I think he had like 5 fouls or something. So it's funny because like it ended up being that Miles Turner's foul trouble ends up throwing Dacknold off of his game. And he takes both iHeart and Chet off the floor, and it was just like, okay.
Yeah. But that didn't happen as much in game 2. In game 2, they got back to some double big looks. Hit Jokic to the Pacers. This is a funny name of our chat member who's a Pacers fan and seemingly Jokic fan. Says our peak is slightly higher than OKC's floor, so you're saying there's a chance. Yeah, I feel like it's similar in a way. Game 2 reminded me a little bit of like the Nuggets Thunder series, where it was like the starters were winning their minutes, even though I think the starters lost their minutes in game 2. But then the bench would come in. Like the game got out of hand. They were up by 23, like at some point in the second, and the SJ was off the floor a lot of that time. And Halliburton came back in down like 11, and then didn't even take a shot until like 1 minute left in the second half. So like, yeah, your first point I think is like, Hali needs to be more aggressive and things of that nature.
We're talking about how Hali dealt with more aggressive defense in game 2, but I think Shea has like a negative on off these playoffs, because not because they're not great with him on the floor, but because the bench units are just freaking crushing everybody.
They're so good. It's so unfair.
It's like a weird opposite, because like it was SGA is like leading them in on off in the regular season. I think a lot of it honestly is Caruso. I think he's the one that's leading the Thunder in on off in the playoffs. Is like those Caruso units just absolutely smother you, and it's not just him, but him being on the floor and taking on certain assignments lets other defenders take on like weaker offensive options, and they constrict you even more. I heard people comparing the Florida Panthers going to ice hockey for a second defense to a boa constrictor or a python on the Edmonton Oilers yesterday. And that's how I feel about OKC in these bench units that are just like, it's just a bunch of high motor defensive players that like all feed off of each other. Like, and then they go into a frenzy on you like piranhas, and you're just like, well, here's the ball, you can have the ball, you get a ball, and you get the ball, and you get the ball, and you guys can all just get your transition runouts, right? Like that's just how they sort of exist on the like I don't know that we thought about the bench like this last year in Denver, but in previous years when it's like, okay, we got Zeke at the 5, we're going small ball, we're going to defend, and then we're going to run. It's like, that's just what the Thunder do, but they do the thing that you have to do when you defend to run, which is force turnovers. We don't do that. Okay, let's talk about game 2 then, which, look, Indy got the split. That they did their jobs. And I fully expected game 2 to be like a 30, 40 point blowout. It wasn't that. It was a blowout, but it wasn't, we are 30 times better than you. You don't even look like you belong on the floor kind of blowout that OKC has had in every other game 2 in the playoffs. But it was a blowout, and I kind of expected it, not just because OKC was going to respond after game 1 and they're at home, but because Indiana was also going to let up a bit, and you can't let up against this OKC team. Like, you have to be on your toes at all times. So OKC ends up winning 123-107. The Indiana third stringers were trying to make it a game late. Which is why this is like a less than 20 point margin, but I thought that was interesting.
Oh, did you think they were going to come back again in that game?
No, I didn't. I was like, OKC's not gonna let that happen. Like they've been playing like, no, we need to bury these guys, and I thought they were going to do that. But it's different when like the third string guys are in and they're trying to make a run. It was just like, well, they're just making threes. I was less concerned about if I'm an OKC fan, I would be less concerned about a comeback and more concerned that like our starters were gonna have to come back in the game. Like it was gonna get that kind of close, but it didn't. In game 2, I thought Halliburton was just not aggressive enough. But a lot of people say that, so what does it actually mean? Right? I don't think he was actually that aggressive in game 1 either. And a large part of it is that he was struggling to create space both on and off the ball against Lou Dort. In the first clip that I have here of Hali versus a blitz, I think it might be Lou or Cason Wallace on him in this clip. Is it Lou? It's Lou. With Chet guarding Obi. So they're running pick and roll with Obi top. And so OKC actually scores here.
Yeah, this one stood out to me too.
I didn't actually love this possession, but I was wondering how you felt about generally how Obi is doing as a roller on a possession like this. He actually does make contact on the screen. I had in my notes like he kind of slips, but looking at it back, like he makes contact with the screen, like gets Hali a little bit of separation from Dort. But I put the fact that Dort recovered more on Dort than Obi.
Yeah, I mean, Obi looked to like shoot there too. He like looked down at the 3, but he sees Chet coming, so he's just swinging and setting another screen, which I think is perfectly fine. Like if that shot's not open, they score out of it for sure, right? And that is a tough bucket on Chet that you're not necessarily going to get every time.
Yeah.
Because I thought Chet really stepped up his defense because I thought he was kind of a non-factor in game 1.
Yes.
But
in game 2, he was just completely locking down the paint.
Yeah,
there were a lot of times where I'm like, oh, the Pacers actually get a layup attempt, and then he's just there, and they're like, nope.
Yeah.
Or like either they're like that. Either the Pacers kind of block themselves by not even taking the attempt, or Chet blocks them. Like he had this one. I didn't have it in the clip rundown, but he has this one block that's like the shot is like at its apex, and they're going for this like one of those like scoop layups. That's the one of these like giant killer type shots that Shea or like Jamal and like Kyrie have in their bag where it goes really high arcing, and I think it was like a Naismith drive, and Chet just blocks it at its apex into the stands, and I was like, oh, okay, it's one of those games.
Yeah,
Chet really needed, I think he was like, I need to be more locked in on like this.
Yeah, viewer comment that the Thunder are making the Pacers take tough shots and making them work. That's a good example right there, as well as like the kind of things that the Thunder are trying to take away from Halliburton, where it's like he can be a pass first person where he's like towing the line between floor general and scorer, which we've seen with other players struggle with, utilizing at the right times. But a lot of the passes that Halliburton's able to get off is just something like that, just passing out of a blitz, and then or just like throwing a one pass away on the perimeter to not even an advantage type of play. Is just like swinging it, and then someone else has have to run something. So
yeah, there were a lot of possessions in this game where I'm like, Halliburton is, forget touching the paint, he's barely getting 2 feet into the 3-point line on a drive before he's like kicking out and either resetting or just like resetting for himself, or just handing the ball off to somebody else to try to do something on that possession. Let's bring up the Halliburton versus the Switch clip here. So they end up, this is a guard to guard screen. He sets with Naismith, and then they end up switching it with, so Shea is on him, and then Hali gives the ball to Naismith, who now has Lou Dort on him.
This is that thing I'm talking about where he's like, there's no advantage. He's just like, here, you take the ball.
And he doesn't even call for it back. This isn't like, oh, Naismith was supposed to give it back to him, because now Hali has the advantage. He's Hali's the better scorer / driver, like creator, and he's got the weaker defender on him. And Hali doesn't call for the ball back here. He gives it to Naismith.
Yeah.
To attack Lou Dort in isolation. Like, that's not good offense, right? This isn't like, oh, I'm trying to let the game come to me. It's like, this is passivity,
And that was coming
right?
off of
There's
a
a line.
screen too, and he just stopped his dribble.
Yeah,
Like, he didn't need to give up his dribble right there at all. Like, I know Shea's right there, but why not go at him?
exactly. Exactly. So I thought this was just like a bad Hali game. Not just like, I think OKC did things to make it a bad all the Pacers game, but it was a bad Hali game in terms of process. Whereas I felt like, yeah, Halliburton wasn't particularly aggressive in through like most of game one either, but I don't think that he was like this passive. And he was doing other good things in game one, like Dort was face guarding him a lot in game one, so he was like setting screens for other guys, and creating space for them that way, that kind of thing. I didn't really see as much of that in game two.
Do you think he
In
was
addition to
tired?
the probably, and I think on top of that, like again, like Indiana, let's like they're like we got our split, and it's game two, and it's fine. Like we're gonna
Yeah,
be fine, right?
it did. Yeah, and I mean the Nuggets won the first game similarly, and then the Thunder came out. They looked so much more focused in that game. Everyone was locked into hitting their shots. I think they were like, "Hey, we gotta really put up or shut up right now," and they were just focused and aggressive.
The other, series that you can compare to this one was the one against the Cavs, and I'm not saying that the Pacers are going to win in five, but I'm just thinking about that game two, right? The Pacers come back from down 20 in that game one, and they win at the last second. In game two is when you find out, like, oh, we've got three Cavs starters that are injured. How are they going to come out in this game? Like, that's going to be a problem. We had our show, and I was like, well, I hope they come back, because if they don't, then I'm changing my prediction to Pacers in however many, in 6, I think I said, right? But then the Cavs came out in that game too, and they went up 20, and then they blew it in the fourth quarter to the Pacers again. But the fact is the Pacers were still down 20. So I think they actually have had sort of let down moments in these game twos. They won against the Knicks in game two, and I think they led most of the way, but it wasn't like, their best game. So just in terms of like series script, as people like to talk about it, I was not expecting the Pacers to look great in this game too. And if you're not going to look great, you are not going to beat the Thunder.
Yeah. Yeah. They can't have that we got split mentality that I think the Nuggets had too. Like, we just took game two off completely and didn't even really try.
I didn't really care about game two for the Nuggets, because I was like, they're not going to win this even if they try, because OKC is going to just come out and hit every shot, be like, we need to reassert our dominance and like take control back of this series, and like feel like, so I was like, I was fine with them doing that. I'm also fine with Indiana doing this, to be very clear. It was just like,
the
what
series
happened?
Isn't over at all. Like, you're still in a good spot, tied 1-1
Yeah,
going
they
home.
stole home court advantage,
But-
right? They still, have,
And
are
you
in
didn't
that
get
situation.
blown out as badly as you could have. But it was over pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Um,
So, okay, let's talk about what else went wrong in game two. You talked about earlier about the shots that Aaron Wiggins started making in that second quarter when the game got out of hand. I thought the Pacers offense in the second quarter was like incredibly bad.
yeah.
So the clips that I have here are all the live ball turnovers that they had in the second quarter. There were 4 live ball turnovers. We talked about the difference in the a lot of people talked about the difference in the live ball versus dead ball turnovers that the Pacers had in game one. So even though they had so many turnovers, a lot of them were dead balls, so they didn't give OKC these transition run out opportunities. So, okay, in this first one, it's a semi-transition kind of situation. Miles Turner's trying to just not give up the advantage, so he's like dribbling a lot, and then he ends up just like, what was he doing here? I thought
They
this
call
was
that
just
a
like
charge,
a very. Did they?
I think so.
But again, like, you're giving up an offensive possession regardless, right? So I thought Miles was like, that was a moment that sort of reminds me of like a very young player, like in their first playoff game kind of thing, where they're just like a little too antsy.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's been some of that for a lot of these players, like here and there, like just at weird times being nervous or being too excited. Like, is going to take time to settle in an NBA Finals for sure. But like
Yeah.
Miles was amazing in fourth quarter in game one.
Yeah,
Maybe
but
it's
I
a
thought he
little
was
bit
struggling early in that game. I think he
Yeah.
ended up being really good defensively against Chet over the course of it. But in the first quarter, I was like, oh, this is going to be a tough series for Miles Turner on both ends. Defensively, he's been better. But offensively, I think he's still going to struggle. And it's not just like making shots. So I think that like the speed of how OKC makes you play is going to be a problem for him, just processing wise. And I felt like on that possession, he was like, we can't, like, we're in semi-transition. We can't give up the advantage. I have to just like keep doing stuff and like keep the energy in the ball kind of thing. Like, don't let them like get fully set. And I think he just did too much.
Yeah. I mean, bigs is the reason they're usually doing handoffs and not
dribbling.
Yeah.
Not the actual dribble part of the dribble.
Yeah. Just handoffs.
Okay, let's go to the Halliburton bad pass here. So he's trying to get this to Obi, who's running down the floor in transition. This is a really long pass. It looks like, he makes it from behind the half court line. And then is that Wiggins who comes in and picks it off when...
Yeah.
Yeah. I have my note here. A lot of people talk like, yes, the ball does travel faster than the man. Like that ball makes it from where Halliburton is to where Obi almost was faster than Halliburton could have dribbled it down there for sure. But when you're looking at passes that are that long, I think that it's tough to do. And we saw this a lot in the Nuggets series when we tried to make really long outlet passes. It gives these like insanely voracious defenders more time to recover to where the ball is going, because everyone knows where the ball is going at that point. These guys are so like small and quick and like hungry for like wherever the ball is, like we gotta get it, that when you're making like these like half court passes, it actually gives whoever, because there's usually four of these guys on the floor at the same time that are like these like have a great nose for the ball, trying to sniff that out wherever it is on the court at any given time. It gives them more time to get to it. So while I appreciate pushing the ball up the floor and pushing pace, I don't think those long outlet passes will be Indiana's friend in this series.
Nah. And he's probably learned that right after that. So he'll probably limit that kind of pushing of the pace and the risky passes. But at least it almost got to his man. I remember like Jamal and them just throwing the ball way out of bounds on lobs. That
True.
Because
they're trying. I think he was trying to avoid all the OKC hands and like doing too much.
Yeah,
to
like
avoid
that's
them.
how much they were throwing it up in the air.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to the Miles entry pass. This is just another example of Miles sort of struggling to make reads at the speed OKC makes you. So Dort is completely ignoring somebody. Halliburton. He's like, oh, I can just leave Halliburton. Like these guys are all like, I'm gonna go to where the ball is, wherever it is.
Yeah.
So Miles
and
has
Nesmith,
to. Yeah.
Sorry, Nesmith was right there to like maybe set a flare or something too, and Miles could have just thrown it. But yeah, I think they were trying to get Siakam going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think Dort also reads like, oh, Miles Turner has already decided what he's going to do with the ball when he turns his head and begins to initiate that pass. That Dort's like, oh, I'm fine leaving Halliburton because he's not going to change his mind and run a handoff or pass to pass for like a flare, like a three off a flare screen. I can't talk today.
OKC really forced them into doing things that they don't necessarily want to do in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and that's like part of like they're trying to get Siakam going, which is something that Indiana does a little bit, but it's not like a lot of their offense relies on flow. And Hali has been very vocal on his thoughts about post play and how boring it is. So I don't know that that's like what they would do normally, but they wanted to, again, get Siakam going because they kind of need him in this series. Like they need his good games. He was actually decent in game one, even though he wasn't as efficient as he normally is. I just thought he was really impactful defensively in that game too. But I think they were especially because, again, OKC is going even smaller than they normally do in this series because they aren't playing as much of the double big lineups, even if they did a little bit more in game 2. They're trying to punish switches that way, but there are so many ways to punish switches that I expected to see more of from Indiana, such as, slips. And there's all kinds of off-ball stuff that you can do to punish switches outside of, like, post entries, right?
And the Pacers can do that kind of stuff. Like they're able to.
They are. They absolutely are. But in this case, it's like, well, OKC, they're not just going to give you like the switch on one guy and then whatever. They're going to be fronting the post. They're going to be trying to deny as much as possible. They're going to be bringing help in from all sides, etc.
You still got to adjust to that because we were having trouble getting the ball to Jokic in the post. So, it's going to be hard to get to small ball wings as well. So
right. They're like, well, we might not be great at guarding the thing that you do the best if it happens to be the post, which it's not for the Pacers, but they were trying to do that more. But we're going to make your life a living hell trying to get into that.
Yeah.
Right.
And it works.
Yeah, this is like the thing with OKC's defense. They have this, like I said, this sort of multiplicative effect. When you have all these high IQ, high motor defenders, they feed off of each other. Not just like energy wise, but we talk about this with OKC all the time with all the backline rim protection they have. And it's not just Chet and Ihart, it's all of the guards. Like everyone knows that other guys are going to cover for them, so they have no problem being as aggressive as possible. Not just on the perimeter, but even on that possession where Dort's like, I'll leave Hali. Maybe he'll get the ball, but someone else is going to cover him for me, and that's fine. And if not, I'm going to get a steal. And so they're able to make these really high risk plays a lot. And it, has this like synergistic effect. And I don't think I've ever been more wrong about like a preseason like thing about a single team, like how they would play, than when I said, what are they going to do? Force more turnovers?
Oh, yeah, that was so funny. But that gave me so much hope for the season.
No hope.
And here we are. It's even worse.
Speaking of the swarms, let's get the Nembhard getting swarmed clip up here. So Nembhard in transition, they are surrounding him on this. They're kind of playing him. They're kind of zoning up on him here. There's somebody trailing Nembhard on this possession. Or no, it's just Miles.
Screened.
Shea gets screened. True. But it doesn't matter because you've got nail help. You've got Chet zoned up from the back. Like, I don't even know who Chet's supposed to be guarding on this possession. I think this is just, they're zoning up a lot. I saw a lot of zone on Nembhard in this game. And I think a lot of it was like, we have to defend him like SGA because he was killing us on drives in the fourth quarter of game 1.
Right? Yeah, Nembhard is just dribbling right into a wall, a blue wall. And he was like, oh, shit. And SGA recovers. Got to be careful with the ball and starts moving it, swinging it. I mean, Nembhard, he's still young. Like, as good as he is, he's got some growing pains to do as well, especially against a defense this good.
Yeah, for sure. All right, the last section of this game 2 I want to talk about is what they did with SGA because he had a great game. He had a bunch of points. I actually didn't list how many points Shea had.
34.
Was it? Thank you, Will. 34 points in this game. And I thought he was just creating space a lot better in game 2 than game 1. And the Thunder were doing some different things to try to create that for him. Yeah. The first one is the high screens for Shea. They're setting these screens for him at the logo. And whether he's rejecting them or using them, he's driving into relatively open space. I thought Mathurin needed to play that a bit better. You have to force him to at least use the screen and give your help a chance to help, right? But he was not able to do that. He gets caught flat-footed and Shea just blows right by him.
Not a great contest from Neesmith right there, but what do you expect,
Yeah.
But it's easy to do when you're up 15, Grace, and you're a front runner. Come in when the bench gets you a lead and just
a lot of the the possessions I picked were from that second quarter on because that's when the game got out of hand.
Yep. Yeah, they just
So
increased it. So to be fair, I'm just hating on SGA. Don't mind
I know, and I'm being the counterbalance.
me.
The next one here is Shea rejecting the screen. Is
this the right
this
one?
the
Yeah.
one?
Oh, this is
I
what
don't
I.
know, that's
Well,
that was just Shea scoring
this
some other
one.
bucket.
Oh, Nemhard.
This
What
is
were
just
you doing,
was this
brother?
a sideline out of bounds?
Yeah.
Yep, and then you just get working too hard to deny. Shea's actually really good on some of these out of bounds plays, baseline or sideline out of bounds. They're good at drawing up ones to get him a layup because there's so much attention paid to other guys that might come and set him a screen. And I think Nemhard here, he was being too aggressive, but unfortunately he doesn't have teammates like the Thunder do where he can rely on
Just
somebody on the
save
back
you.
to save you if you gamble and you don't get the ball. All right, let's go to Shea getting downhill on Pascal in drop. So in this one, Caruso sets the screen. Nemhard gets clipped by a Caruso screen, which is not great. And Pascal's just not ready to be up at the level. He's dropping way back,
Yeah,
right? He could have disrupted this dribble a bit more and stopped SGA's drive, but now he's playing in drop and he's just not big enough to impact that shot. And Shea's good anyway. Like he can make the shot against a good drop defender, but I don't think that's the best way to use Pascal. So I'm kind of like, why aren't they switching more on possessions like this? Like just switch Pascal into Shea. Like he's a versatile defender. Just kind of see where you can get with that as opposed to drop.
Look how much space there is.
Yeah.
And it's like you are not.
He's going from the logo. Like I said, like they're setting these screens super high, both the guard to guard screens and the screens from the setters as well, to give Shea maximum space to get that head of steam that
stayed
can
with
make him pretty lethal in the half court.
I can't believe he stayed with him as well as he did, even. But like that is so hard to do, to close out from that amount of space, especially against the MVP or so he's been called by others.
He won the award, Will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just a last note on that possession. I usually expect Shea to try and reject the screen, and you have to work hard to make him use it because he's always trying to reject the screen and get downhill and get like maximum space again to create that head of steam. But when you're setting these screens so far up the court, he can still use the screen and get the head of steam to get downhill pretty easily, which is why I think it's a big mistake to try to guard this and drop, because you're giving him as much space as possible to work with and sort of build up that advantage that he has as a driver.
Real quick, a couple comments. Yeah. SGA hating surprising to me. He's classy and capable. Admirable minus foul baiting. This is a reasonable fan opinion.
Whatever.
But come to my Twitter if you want fun hating on SGA. Because
I am not surprised at SGA hating, because every fan base hates the other guys. That's just how it is.
It's just sports hate.
And on Twitter, this is just sports hate.
It comes out of the Jokic like MVP rivalry and such, and just like the fact that OKC is like a budding dynasty while we're trying to like still be in our championship window. So I'm going to be hating on them for the foreseeable
They should take
future.
it as a compliment, honestly, because like people don't even really hate on Giannis anymore. Like that rivalry's dead. We won,
I know.
Right? Like, okay, so in the last clip I've got of SGA here, I asked like, well, why are they switching Pascal onto Shea? So he gets a switch onto Pascal and then runs him through a screen and is able to just take his stop and pop midi over Miles, who is again playing in drop. He's a better drop defender, but this is a shot that like most players you live with, right? But obviously it's a shot that Shea makes over 50% of the time, so that kind of sucks if you're the defense.
Yeah.
But this is probably why Indiana doesn't want to switch Pascal onto Shea, because they're like, well, he'll just run him through a screen. I think this is just smart basketball. This is the kind of thing that, like, you know, if Jamal gets a switch onto Pascal, I'm immediately like, okay, great, go run pick and roll, because like Jamal, you know, he can be a good isolation player if he's got the right kind of matchup in front of him, like a smaller player or something like that. He doesn't do that well against bigger players in isolation. So you get the big on you and you run them through the screen. Like, you take advantage of that otherwise good defenders, less thing that they do not as strong as their other, defensive attributes, and you're able to extend the advantage that you were able to create there. And so I have to give Shai, credit for this one, because it's like, well, this was just smart basketball. Because Shai is one of the best, if not the best, isolation player in the league. He could have just taken Pascal off the dribble and tried to do that here. He didn't do that. He's like, let me do this smarter thing, run him through a screen, get even more space, and there we go. And he got to his spot and took his shot there. Again, it's like, you kind of live with that shot more than, as the defense, more than obviously the driving layups, right? But Shai can also hit that shot. So to me, it's like, why aren't they playing more zone? Like, it's kind of weird that the Wolves and the Pacers so far haven't really pushed the zone button at nearly the same volume that the Nuggets did to try to just like make somebody else make a play. I feel like Shai has been incredibly comfortable ever since round 2.
Definitely. I mean, on some level, you pencil in players of this caliber doing what they do and getting what they want. Like, there's only so much you can do to stop it. But I was going to say, how would you expect them to treat that? Because you said you're fine with them living with it. Do you just kind of like...
I'm not fine with them living with it. It's just like, if it was somebody other than SGA, I can understand a defense being okay with that shot. And it is also better than the driving layups, like I said, because it's not just... I talked about in the Wolves series, one of the reasons that you didn't want to leave Shai on an island and like go one-on-one, whereas most of the time, or a lot of the time, you'd live with like even the best players in the league sometimes just going in isolation, because it's still not going to be as efficient as other offense. But the thing with SGA is, one of the things that makes him such an efficient scorer is he's able to get to the line a lot. So you live with the shot that he just took, because unlike in the case where he gets just a straight layup, and both are worth 2 points, but obviously you're going to make the layup more times than you make the midi. There's less of a chance of getting an and one or just getting free throws on that possession too. So that's something you have to factor into your efficiency equation when you're trying to figure out what you live with. Nekias Duncan actually pointed out, again, this is like in reference to all the high screens that OKC set in game 2. When they ran pick and roll for SGA in game 2, the Thunder were scoring 1.3 points per possession. That is not a number that a defense can live with, so they need to figure out either a different coverage and or better execution of the coverages that they did employ. Because like I said, it's like Pascal in drop. I don't know if that's the coverage you want, but also if you're going to do it, it needs to be a higher drop than it was, so that you can stop Shai's drive in its tracks on that particular possession, just as an example.
Yeah. I mean, their defense needs to be so much better. So whatever coverages they're going with, they need to execute it way better. They can't be being caught off guard. Although, Miles, he can only like navigate those kinds of things so well.
I mean, on that last position, Miles did what he was supposed to do.
Yeah, exactly.
He's dropping, and then he comes in for like a late contest, but SGA makes that shot. That was more about like what he did once he got the switch onto Pascal,
right?
Than anything Miles did. Yeah. Okay, last clip that I wanted to show, and then I'll let you do the Chet stuff. There was a possession with Benedict Mathurin that sort of like inspired me, because it's exactly what I would like the Nuggets to be able to do. So before you don't hit play yet, but like you said, they were trying to get Pascal going a lot in this game, because he was getting switches onto all these smalls, especially Cason Wallace, who I think is probably the smallest player that the Thunder play in their playoff rotation, besides apparently AJ Mitchell in game 1. So here Cason is fronting the post and trying to deny the ball, and Chet is helping by kind of playing off of Nesmith there, and either like being prepared to contest, but also kind of half playing the entry pass as well, right? Or not Nesmith, Mathurin. So you can go ahead and hit play now. Instead of trying to force the ball in in here. Matherin drives, draws the help, and is able to kick to Obi in the corner, who maybe should have taken that shot, but J-Dub maybe blocks it, so he sidesteps and takes it 3 instead. This is more of what I would have liked to see from different players on the Nuggets when Jokic was getting fronted and they were doubling or fronting the post and doubling from the weak side to try to prevent the entry pass. It's not just preventing the entry pass. They were just like straight forcing those turnovers when you tried to force the entry pass. But there's an advantage here when, let's say Matherin's an even better driver than he is here. And he's able to figure out, I can use the fact that they're fronting Pascal and use kind of Kaysen as a screen to get Chet off of me and come up and just like get a layup on the other side of the rim, actually.
Yeah, like use it as a little brush screen the way you drive in.
Exactly.
If you don't turn it over, which is what we were doing.
Right. Well, because we're forcing in entry passes. Like, this is what we do here. It's like there's a counter to that, actually. And I say, like, if Matherin were a better driver, he would have done that. OKC's defense reacted as if that's what he was going to do, because they don't let Chet just guard that drive one-on-one. The help comes in. They ignore OB in the corner. J-Dub does shift over, so like they're a smart defense. He's able to shift over and kind of play that gap, so he probably would have been able to recover to OB in the corner if he had taken that initial shot instead of sidestepping, as we saw with his very aggressive flyby contest after that. But the fact is, like, okay, like you created a look that I'm more willing to live with than some of the one pass possessions that resulted in corner threes from mediocre shooters. I'd rather have like a 4-pass possession that ends up in a corner three from a mediocre shooter. Or, if Matherin, like, again, in another possession that plays out the same way, maybe Matherin just goes up for that layup. Because the help is maybe a little bit late trying to react to that because they're not sure, like with the Nuggets especially, you might think like they're like keyed in on the entry pass because they know that's like all we're trying to do, right? So if you surprise them with something else, they're probably even more surprised than here where Matherin does something else because it's the Nuggets and that's like not in their wheelhouse. So I wanted to point out that possession because it reminded me of what could have been. There could have been different corner three bricks than the ones we had.
Yeah, it does give a good like insight into what maybe skills you want to add onto the Nuggets so that they're just a little more matchup proof than they may seem, especially against paint packing teams like the Thunder, where it's very difficult.
Yeah. And as much as you can pack the paint, there's still only so many players you can pack the paint. So if you had a player that could navigate a semi-packed paint to either create a shot for themselves or draw help and create a shot for others, that just adds another layer to your offense. Again, just me making the case for more creation on the Nuggets, not as opposed to more shooting, but sort of prioritized more than that. Although I don't really expect it to happen anytime soon. But Will, you had some things you wanted to say about Chet's defense in game 2.
I just thought he just was so much more active, like, and head on a swivel, responding to what was in front of him. He was quick. He was hitting his shot intentionally right out of the gate, which I think gave him that intensity and confidence through the whole game. Because, in the first game, he just, like, missed coverages, didn't get back on defense. People just ran back. He didn't. Pacers got easy buckets, which you can't do against them. It's just like a young player, not necessarily having that consistency yet, even though I know he can be really good. And like I said, like he's going to be so important for them. I tweeted, even though I put out some clips of like multiple defensive lapses that he had, I knew he was going to play way better in game 2. And I said that like he's going to be so much more intense because even though he's still young, I know he's going to come back and right that wrong. And all of the Thunder did that in game 2, which I expected. I was hoping like the Pacers could still make it a game because they're deep. They have a lot of talent too, and they've been on an amazing run. And so when you're in that mindset, you hope you go in and put a competitive product on the floor. keep extending the lead in the series because they've been up in every series that they've played so far, pretty much.
The Pacers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the East. Obviously, the Thunder are a different beast, so you got to like expect, you're probably not going to win the first 2 home games. That would be crazy. But, they didn't get blown out too bad, so there's still hope for the Pacers. And the series is definitely way more interesting than I thought, as much as I give OKC a hard time, for sure. But yeah.
Yeah, no, it is an interesting finals. I know the way that game 1 started, just as like a general note on the series, it felt like everybody on the floor was so incredibly tense. And I was just watching that thinking about how young everybody on both of these teams are and the fact that they're playing in the NBA finals. It's like, this feels just like a very different kind of NBA finals just because I'm not used to both teams being this young. I don't know that it's happened before, honestly. And so it is like a very different experience for a lot of these guys. Who has the most? I think Pascal Siakam of the 2 rotations is the only player that's been in an NBA finals before. Is that right? Caruso, because he won with the Lakers. So Caruso and Pascal are the 2 guys.
But it was the bubble championship, and that doesn't count, didn't you hear?
Well, yeah, but it is different being in an arena where that's the energy of an NBA finals too. So,
but Caruso has that like presence about him, I think, for the Thunder, where it's like he has so much confidence. Yeah. Oh God, it's killing me.
And helps them project that even more. Well, that's been our discussion of the NBA Finals so far. Do you have any predictions for Game 3 in Indiana? Both teams have actually kind of like low-key sucked in Game 3s in these playoffs, which is interesting.
My only prediction is Game 3 is definitely going to be a close game. I don't think like the Pacers are going to blow them out, but I would be surprised. I guess you can't be surprised if the Thunder blow anyone out at this point because they're just like so consistent with what they're throwing at you.
You come out with a bad game, like they're just gonna like smack you pretty hard. So yeah, it's interesting because I was talking about how the Pacers haven't actually been that great in their Game 3s. I think they lost Game 3 against the Bucks. That was on the road because they had home court in round 1. Then they lost Game 3 against the Cavs at home, and they lost Game 3 against the Knicks at home in Indiana. And so yeah, they've lost all their Game 3s. Whereas with the Thunder, they lost in their worst loss of the playoffs was that Game 3 loss against the Wolves, where they lost by like 40. Game 3 against the Nuggets, they lost. It was like that was the one that the Nuggets won in overtime, actually. But the Thunder offense was like off for most of that game, and the Nuggets could have and probably should have just won it in regulation, but they didn't. And then Game 3 against the Grizzlies, they were down 30 at half before Ja got injured, right? So I'm really curious to see how both of these teams come out in Game 3, which is tomorrow.
It's going to be fun. For you guys still here, thank you for listening to our finals portion. We definitely still want to cover it because it's the most important basketball series on. It's also the only one that's on. And we will be talking about it until a champion is crowned.
I gotta say about this NBA Finals, Will, it is the best NBA basketball that is on TV right now.
It is the best. Yes.
No, it actually hasn't been bad, though. Like, Game 1 was actually pretty interesting. Obviously, the ending helped with that. Because I thought this was going to be a blowout at half, and then it wasn't. Because OKC has this thing where they kind of let teams hang around, and I think Indiana has a knack for hanging around, too.
Yeah, so that makes it really fun.
Yeah, for sure. So you just never know when they're going to go on that run. Okay, well, everybody, thank you. If you're still hanging around in the chat, we really appreciate you guys. We appreciate all your comments, at least the good ones, you know. If you made it this far, you were clearly a fan of the show. But if you are, listening to us live or after the fact and you haven't already and you like our content, please remember to click the like button and hit the subscribe button, as well as hitting the notification bell. Leave us a review on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. Tell your family and your friends to leave us a review, preferably 5 stars. That would be great. Tell your enemies to do the same. But again, preferably 5-star reviews. You can follow us on socials. All our links are in the description there. And always remember that winning is fun and losing sucks.